What if you woke up tomorrow and could hear every thought around you? Not a feeling, not intuition, every word, every fear, every secret. The person sitting across from you at breakfast thinking something they would never say out loud. Your closest friend, hiding something they've kept from you for years. A stranger on the street carrying a thought so dark it stops you cold. At first, it sounds like a superpower, but within 24 hours, it would become something else entirely. Here's what nobody tells you about reading minds. The human brain generates an estimated 6,000 thoughts per day. Not meaningful thoughts, not organized sentences, fragments, contradictions, impulses that flash and disappear before the person even registers them. Most of what people think, they would never choose to think. A loving parent who has a sudden dark thought they immediately reject. A loyal friend who briefly wonders what their life would look like without you. A kind stranger whose mind briefly goes somewhere cruel before snapping back to normal. This is called intrusive thought, and neuroscientists confirm it is completely universal. Every human brain produces them. So the first thing reading minds would actually reveal isn't what people truly feel, it's how little control any of us have over the raw noise our brains generate. And that single discovery would change how you see every person around you forever. Now here's where it gets genuinely complicated. Real neuroscience has already made the first steps toward this. Brain-computer interfaces can now decode basic mental imagery. Research teams have reconstructed images a person was looking at purely from their brain activity. Scientists at UC Berkeley decoded words someone was thinking without them speaking. We are not close to full mind reading, but we are no longer nowhere, and the closer researchers get, the more they uncover a deeply uncomfortable truth. Thoughts are not what we think they are. We experience our thoughts as a stream, a narrative voice inside our head that feels like us, like our identity, our choices, our true self. But neuroscience shows that the brain makes decisions measurably before the conscious mind becomes aware of them. Researcher Benjamin Libet demonstrated that brain activity predicts a voluntary movement up to several seconds before a person consciously decides to move, which means your conscious you might not be the one actually making decisions. Your thoughts might be the story your brain tells you after it has already acted. So when you read someone else's mind, what exactly are you reading? The real them, or the noise their brain generates before their actual self even gets a chance to respond? This question becomes the most unsettling part of the ability, because suddenly the line between what someone thinks and who someone is becomes impossible to draw. The person who had a dark thought they immediately rejected, are they the thought or the rejection? Are you the impulse or the choice? Now imagine knowing this about every single person you meet. You'd hear their darkest flicker and their immediate correction simultaneously. You'd know their fear before they've processed it themselves. You'd hear the version of themselves they've never admitted to anyone, including themselves. Within days, the ability would begin isolating you in a way nothing else could. Not because people are terrible, but because you would know too much of what it actually means to be human, and the human mind was never designed to hold that weight. There's a concept in psychology called the transparency illusion. Most people dramatically overestimate how much others can tell about what they're thinking and feeling. We walk around assuming our emotions are written on our face, that people sense our anxiety, our resentment, our secret hopes. In reality, study after study shows that people are far worse at reading each other than they believe. The entire architecture of human relationships is built on this gap. The space between what we actually think and what others know we think is where trust lives, where intimacy lives, where the decision to share something with someone becomes meaningful because you chose to. Now close that gap entirely. Suddenly trust doesn't exist. It can't. You don't choose to tell someone how you feel. They already know. You don't decide to open up about something painful. The moment you're near them, it's already visible. Every relationship you have would fundamentally change in nature, not because the people change, but because the one ingredient that makes relationships meaningful, voluntary disclosure, disappears completely. But here's the layer beneath that, the one that makes this ability truly unbearable. You wouldn't just hear what people think about others, you'd hear what they think about you, the carefully constructed version of you that your friends describe when you're not in the room. The private reservations your family has never said out loud. The way people's energy visibly shifts when you walk in. The micro-adjustments they make that you've always sensed but could never confirm. Now you confirm all of it, simultaneously, in real time. And here's what the research on interpersonal perception actually shows. The gap between how we see ourselves and how others see us is not as large as we fear, but it's also not as small as we hope. People do notice things we wish they didn't, and people also believe better things about us than our worst fears assume. The ability to read minds wouldn't just expose the bad, it would expose the full complexity of how you exist in other people's minds, which is something the human psyche was never built to process clearly. Now scale this outward. A world where even one person can read minds changes every system built on private thought. Legal systems assume that actions and words are what matter, not intentions. If thoughts become readable, the entire foundation of justice shifts. Do you punish someone for an intention they never acted on? What about a confession extracted not from what someone said, but from what they thought? Politics becomes unrecognizable. The negotiation, the strategy, the carefully timed revelation, all of it collapses when every position is already known. Every relationship between nations, between leaders, between people who need the privacy of an unshared thought to function at all, changes permanently. And then there's the question that sits beneath all of this. If you can hear every thought, every fragment, every dark flicker, and every generous impulse in everyone around you, do you still believe in good and evil? Or do you start to see something more complicated, that most people are trying, that the thoughts they're ashamed of are almost never who they actually are, that the distance between the worst thought a person has ever had and the life they actually live is enormous, and that distance is what we usually call character. Reading minds wouldn't make you powerful, it would make you responsible for a weight of human complexity that nobody was meant to carry alone. Because the truth is, we already half-read minds every day. We sense things, we read rooms, we know when someone isn't saying everything, and even that partial, imperfect version is sometimes more than we can hold. So here's the question I want you to sit with. If you could read minds, would you want to? Or would you realize, the moment the ability arrived, that some walls exist for a reason, not to hide the worst of us, but to protect the space where we get to choose what we share and who we become to each other? So, what do you think? Leave your theory below, subscribe for more impossible questions,